And as someone who has at least done all of the tutorials and all of the games in this series, I can confidently say that 90% of them are terrible. I've tried making this as basic as possible, so it's all you need to beat every fight in the game, and I'm going to try not to make this video long, so I'll start off with the most essential thing.
That's your job to figure out. But I appreciate the question.
So, because using a heat action lowers your combo speed, sometimes you might want to stomp an enemy on the ground with heavy attack without doing a heat action, which you can do by holding the camera reset button, which is L2, LT, ZL, or whatever it is on the keyboard mouse, R or something, I don't remember. This is something that still to this day, I'm pretty sure 2 games actually tell you about, and neither of those 2 are Yakuza 0. Speaking of using a heavy attack, literally just never use a standing heavy attack with any style. They have forever been nearly completely useless in every single game in this series. It's pretty much their only purpose is kicking items at enemies, but that feature barely works and barely does anything. The only one that is useful is Kiryu's brawler style, where if you hold fighting stance and heavy attack, he does this spear kick, which can actually be useful for poking enemies like Big Mr. Shakedown, but for the most part, it's less useful than just attacking in most situations. Now then, with the more general tips out of the way, it's time to look at the 2 playable characters of Kiryu and Majima and their 3 respective fighting styles. I'll start from the start with Kiryu's brawler style. First and foremost, light, heavy. It's his backhand finisher. All of Brawler's finishes, which can be done by pressing heavy attack after 1 to 4 light attacks, are pretty good, but this backhand one, it will carry you for your entire playthrough. And that's it for brawler tips. So it's time I tell you about some good abilities to grab as soon as you can, and bad ones you should try your best to ignore. Now unfortunately, because of how the skill trees work, you kinda have to get most of these abilities, otherwise you can't get good ones that are further down the line, but you can at least pretend you don't have them and just never try to use them. Now for all styles across both characters, health, heat gain, heat retention, and quick stepping related abilities are always worthwhile. All pink abilities are ones you learn from the fighting style's respective master, so for Brawler, that's Bacchus. All but one of the Bacchus ones are heat actions, and the one lets you charge Resolute Counter where you attack after getting hit. I've honestly never charged Resolute Counter in my life, so you can ignore that one, but the heat actions are good. Kick Combo is probably one of the worst skills in the game, and thank God it's optional. If you don't buy it, it'll mean you can never do it by accident as well. As is pretty much always the case in every game except for the newer ones, any standing charge attack is just not worth. Charged Knee Strike is an example of that because it's slow and not that rewarding, so once you've bought it, just pretend you didn't and move on. Brawl Mastery Thrashing. I don't even really know what the hell it actually does, to be honest. But that being said, pummeling an enemy once you've grabbed them, which is usually done with a light attack button, is 9 times out of 10 completely worthless. Same with doing a heavy attack too, to be honest, especially if it's done against a boss, it just doesn't work. So if you grab someone, throwing them to the ground with the grab button is just the easiest option, so do that. Now on to Rush, the second fighting style you get, that's the more evasive, lighter attacking style. I'm gonna be honest, all the Yakuza 0 combat experts will get mad, but Rush is something you can never use for your entire playthrough and honestly be fine.
What? We're flying to Philadelphia! Oh, hell no! That's the hell no! Whoa!
What? We're flying to Philadelphia! Oh, hell no! That's the hell no! Whoa! What? We're flying to Philadelphia!
Menace Beats.
Good morning, good morning. It's great to stay up late. Good morning to you.
Early game, when you have like no upgrades for it, it's actually complete dog shit. Just rely on Brawler's backhand to carry you for quite a while. It's made especially terrible by the gear mechanic, making all of its pissy little punches useless when they're coming out at negative 100 kilometers per hour. But once you start getting upgrades, you can use it to evade around when you're fighting a boss and gain heat by dodging their attacks, and something you can do that's honestly more useful than using it properly, which is just tapping light attack on a boss. This will eventually stun them, and then you can smack them in the head or something. It's also useful in long battles, which are these big story encounters when you need to run to the next spot, as it has the fastest running speed. But try not to press the grab button with it, because I don't know what the hell the point of that attack is. Then for the bad ones, which there's fortunately only a couple, Charged Fist. There's no other way to put it. It's terrible. It's just really bad. Feint Punch is like, I don't know, I've only ever used it by accident, and all those times I kind of wish I didn't. Then finally for Kiryu, there's Beast. This is the big fat tanky style. Its combo attacks are powerful, but what you want to use it most for is its ability to automatically pick up weapons when you light attack next to them. Try to ignore the smaller weapons like traffic cones or those little crates and stuff, and instead go for big things like bikes and signs. Doing this will make fights against large groups of enemies an absolute breeze, and if you want, you can grab enemies when they're down on the floor. Grab them by the head and you just pick them up, which isn't that useful, but grab them by the feet and you can swing them around. Bosses will usually break out of this, but you can swing around street thugs until they die if you want. Now for the abilities. Unfortunately for Beast, Miss Tatsu's got 3 kinda bad abilities. Guarded Weapon Charge, someone will probably tell me is good, but it's slow and you're better off just swinging with what you have. Essence of the Beast Wall Pin is another heat action, and it's easy to pull off, but it's easier to just do a standard weapon heat action, so not too useful there. And Essence of the Beast Overrun is so hyper specific that I have literally never used it in Yakuza 0, and I've only ever used it probably twice in the sequel, Yakuza Kiwami. The other two are quite handy though, fortunately. Charge Attack, again, kinda shit. And Secret of the Destroyer Stout is also something I have literally never used, mostly because I'd rather keep my heat and have a little snack to heal instead. But now for the good ones. Every upgrade to do with guarding is very useful for Beast. It makes it more versatile by allowing you to perfect guard or to reduce damage taken so you don't just die while you're guarding. What's more, you can grab Essence of the Beast Torment for a supremely easy to pull off heat action. Just make sure you're in the third bar, of course. Golden and Herculean Fist are very useful. Then there's an iconic combo with Charging Bear Hug or just regular Bear Hug, which can be only done in the third bar and will drain some heat, but it's strong and pretty much no one can stop you from using it. The other guard counters for Beast are good, but these two are the easiest. But then, when you lose some heat and go down into the second bar, you can very easily use Cyclone Swing, which will then get you some heat back, and you can start the loop all over again. Now on to Majima, whose 3 fighting styles have a lot more useful abilities compared to Kiryu, but equally has a few shit ones. His default style of Thug is another blue style that's super useful. His finishes are actually quite slow and not the best, but specifically this one, which is done with 4 light attacks then you press heavy, is quite good. I don't think it's an upgrade, but for some reason it's the only one you can cancel the N-lag of with an evade, making it incredibly safe and pretty strong. As for upgrades, 4 of Komeki's abilities for Thug are absurdly good. In fact, they may very well be the best master abilities you can learn in any of the styles. All but one, which is Thug Cunning Counterattack. Holy fuck, this thing sucks. It's basically Kiryu's Resolute counter, but slower, weaker, consumes heat, and the input window is like 10 years long, so you will accidentally use it. Only get counterattack if you want the ability that's behind it, but even that one isn't that useful anyway. But anyway, Thug Cunning Evasion Strike gives you evade strikes, which again, as I said, all abilities relating to evasion are good, but Thug's evade strikes are probably the best in the game, and when combined with that one finisher, you can cancel it with an evade, and then kick your enemy in the face or trip them or whatever. Yellow Snake Venom is a good way to get heat when you have none. Same with Thug Cunning Enlightenment, but of course I already said that's good. Secret of the Night Lord Poise is again one of the super clutch but super specific abilities, so it's worth once you get towards the end. Rolling Kick is the only dash attack in Yakuza 0 that works, I swear to god. And of course it's one of the base upgrades, so that's good. Essence of the Thug weapon grab is a hit action that's incredibly easy to use and incredibly useful. Thug Mastery Demonic Shadow actually ends up being more useful than you might realize, especially since you can then choke the enemy once you evade behind them. Reverse Shin Strike I never really used until researching stuff for this. It's kind of weird to use, but it can be a quick way to knock an enemy over and do a hit action on them.
Oh my god. Oh my god. This one's a real coming. We did it. Oh my god, we did it. So much emotion.
Rising Kick, my beloved. Incredibly useful for the whole time you play the game. Essence of the Thug Pursuit, another omega useful hit action. Sometimes a boss might break out of your grab by hitting you, which makes this hit action not work, but when they don't, you get it like a 50-second window to press heavy attack and boom, free damage. Then for the bad ones, Charged Body Blow, another charge attack, and another shit ability. Black Snake Venom can be useful, but that finisher is pretty slow, so you'll rarely get a good chance to use it. Then these last two unfortunately lock a really useful hit action called Essence of the Thug Gun Grab. These are Thug Mastery Insight and Essence of the Thug Blade Steel. They are so situational that I have only ever properly used them for videos, and that was after ages of running around the map in circles to try and record me using them. There's a broken strat you can do on one boss with this, but it's one boss, so who cares? And the last bad ability is actually a super good ability, which is Thug Cunning Harsh Lesson. It's bad because the button listed is wrong. It says to use heavy attack when it's actually grab. Maybe they'll fix it in Director's Cut, but if they don't, this is actually quite a strong counterattack. Now for Slugger. Much like Kiryu's Rush, which is also the second style, this can be kinda shit for quite a while. It's quite slow, clunky, and doing a lot of attacks into a wall will interrupt what you're doing and cause you to recoil back, which is very annoying. However, if you do specifically light, heavy, and then mash heavy, you swing around the bat like a pair of nunchucks. This is like the only useful thing in Slugger that doesn't require an upgrade. It also is the only style in the game to get a hit action without the need to do anything else. You just stand there, either with or without holding the Fighting Stance button, I don't remember, press heavy, and boom, hit action. However, the enemy has to be doing literally nothing, as it won't work if they're in the middle of an attack or something. But for some bad abilities, honestly, I didn't even realize Slugger had evade strike, so yep, probably quick step blow. Secret of Swing Miracle Hit is insanely cool, but so hyper specific that again, you'll just never use it. Secret of Swing Hitback is even more pointless because only specific enemies will throw weapons at you anyway, and by the time you've got that upgrade, you're probably not going to come across those enemies ever again. All Out Swing has some weird strategic purpose I saw someone do once, but it's poo. Now for Breaker. Much like Kiryu's third style, this is super useful for groups of enemies. The grab attack is pointless, and without heat it can seem weak, but the animations make it super evasive when you're attacking, and it generates more heat than me whenever I say the words Yakuza and 3 in the same sentence. As for abilities, the two master heat actions are very handy, especially Essence of Friendly Fire, which is pretty easy to do and very rewarding. And Rolling Snake is also quite a useful attack as it generates good heat and does good damage, although a problem with it is its inconsistency of its hitbox. Fortunately though, if you miss, you can use Rising Rotor to get back up, but then dash pirouette, like the other dash attacks, it's just kind of inconsistent. Pose Soul Quick Step, again with any ability to do with evasion, is very handy to have. Breaker Balance is the only ability like this in this game, I think at least. This is a common thing in all the other games where you can just kind of tech the landing, and in this game it is invaluable. Disruption Immunity 1 is great because Yakuza 0 did a shitty thing where stun guns became freaking broken, but of course it's sadly only in the first bar, so you want to eventually get Disruption Immunity 2. Essence of the Last Stand is a very easy hit action to pull off, and Secret of the Strut Elbow is easy to pull off and doesn't consume heat, but because he tucks in his forearm, sometimes it'll miss, and it's also probably going to be one of the last abilities to get. But now for the bad ones. Charged Windmill. Do I even need to say it anymore?
Thank you, 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 thank you.
Break Roll just kind of sucks. Secret of the Strut Linger can be good, but only increasing your heat in the third bar, and only when you stand still after like 2 seconds. Alright man, it's kind of pointless. If you're in a fighting stance, you should always be jiggling around. Everything to do with Phantom Turn is kind of pointless, like it's a barely evasive evasion that drains the shit out of your heat. I don't know what the point of it is. Then finally, Freeze Counter. The counterattacks are good, but even trying my absolute hardest to let the enemy attack me so I could do them, you're just so much better off doing the finisher after the freeze pose and hitting the enemy that way. They're cool and strong, but goddamn they're pointless. And that's it. Honestly, if you just keep in mind the essential things like using the fighting stance button, the camera reset button disabling heat, and some of the essential fighting style tips like the almighty backhand finisher, you will not succumb to the same problem I see many other people struggle with. Yakuza 0 has a lot of annoying uniqueness to it that doesn't exist in any of the other games, and so as it's a shitload of people's first impressions of the series, a lot of them see this stuff and get kind of put off. But once you figure your way around them, the game's easy, so you're never really going to struggle again. Especially if you end up playing other games in the series, the stuff like the gear mechanic just doesn't exist in other games.
Every boss in this game, by the way, has a knockback technique, and when they do it, they just have like invincibility or super armor or some shit like that. And there's no indicating when they're going to do it, they will just do it. Like Lau Kar Long, remember how you attack him and he just starts spinning his stupid spear at you? How do people not find that annoying? Oh, but these games are complex. No, they're fucking not. Simply put, there's this little thing called a skill issue. The whole series is literally just like you press two buttons. People trying to act like this is some like wise bit of wisdom, like the smartest game designers ever created this shit. No, it wasn't. It's a bunch of people trying to just make like a fun action game where you just chuck bikes at people. Even Lost Judgment is not that complicated. You just do charge finishes at every enemy and then you can still win. Simply put, there's this little thing called a skill issue. Okay, cool. You like Slugfest more? Well, guess what was literally... Slugfest was right next to Cookie in the playlist, so I was actually amazed. Oh! Haha, you fool, I can dodge that. Oh shit, I can't dodge that. Alright, here we go. Please. Swing at me so I get the... Okay, whatever. And then, if I don't fuck up the QTE...
Simply put, there's this little thing called a skill issue.
Excuse me, miss. Do you have cancer? Wow, mango juice prevents cancer.
Yeah, the turn-based games actually have like thought that you can put into them. Okay, as a counter for some reason. Literally, like, why do they give every boss in this game a knockback attack? Why do they think to do that? Considering nothing breaks guards. Like, do you guys not see the problem with that? How did no one think, gameplay designers, that's a bit silly. Enemies can just sit there guarding and then just counter your attacks when they're guarding. And then also they get invincibility while doing it too. How cool is that? Wow. Compared to everything I've already looked at in this video, there technically is no other charged finisher type thing you can do in Yakuza 6 to warrant it just being overshadowed by something else. I mean,
eat during Ramadan? Do Muslims eat 30 days? Do Muslims eat 30 days? Do Muslims not eat every 30 days during Ramadan?
During Ramadan.
Into a lot of modern video games and games that came out around the same time as Yakuza 3. First thing I'll get out of the way is the thing that everyone complains about with the game. The gameplay. No, I'm not just going to say the enemies block too much and be done with it, because realistically it's much more than that. In comparison to the modern Yakuza games, heat generation is arse, there's no separate equipment tab, so gear takes up your already limited inventory, too few attacks can break guards, and when a guard is broken they can just immediately re-guard. The heavy enemies are stupid because you just straight up can't grab them. Bosses take way too long to kill, and it's purely because they have too much health, so it's a lot of doing the same thing over and over again, especially the first fight against Tamashiro, as you will have no cool abilities to use. Even when you do get the cool abilities, there are so few compared to later games that you end up just doing the same thing in every single fight. Even when the defenders get angry at people for doing the same combos over and over again, they'll show you how to properly play the game, and guess what? They'll just do the same thing over and over. Beyond the combat, you can't sprint, so you feel very slow. Oh no, the Kiwami 2 soundtrack is bad, Kiwami 2 is bad. Shut the fuck up. Honestly, like, I've freaking said this before as well. There literally isn't a single bad Yakuza game. Just as like a general overwhelming perspective. Overall perspective, sorry, not overwhelming. Because even though I think Yakuza 1 is dog shit, At the time, when it was the only one, it was great. It was a massive, innovation for those sorts of beat-em-up games and whatever. Nothing had ever done something like that, where you go around, you do mini-games, you have an interesting story and all that. Obviously, in comparison, it's just penis cock. Fist of the North Star Lost Paradise, I think, is a bad game. But even then, you can still have fun with it. It's just the monotony of going back and forth and doing the exact same thing over and over again makes me hate it. But besides that, it's fine. It's great. But so many fans are just like, oh no, Kiwami 2 is the worst game in the franchise. Why is that, good sir? It just is. Good argument. C-word, is what I'd call you. Now then, the die-hard Yakuza 3 fans that like to abuse the shit out of people in the comments will tell you that every issue that people have with the game is a perfectly designed and intentional aspect of the game, created in such a way that you have to actually think about what you're doing and you can't just spam forever. They'll also tell you that if you complain about anything, it's because the game is too hard for you and you suck. However, the game is actually very easy. Even on Legend, you'd find it quite difficult to die. In fact, I can't even think of what the death screen looks like. But you know what else is easy? Getting a stamp and stamping a piece of paper. But now if you stamped 100,000 pieces of paper, you'd probably get pretty bored. And you would definitely be complaining about how monotonous it is stamping the same piece of paper by like the 87,000th time. Now when you're stamping, the best strategy is just to do the same thing over and over to get the task done with as quickly as possible so that you can put it behind you and never have to see it ever again. And so that's exactly why everyone just spams the same combo of light, 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 heavy, heavy over and over again, because that's just the simplest way to get everything over and done with. Despite what the defenders say, you can turn your brain off and spam, and whether you choose to believe it or not, you can actually do that in all of the games. I'm sorry to upset all of the Yakuza fans in the chat, but even people as newbie as all of my COD and Battlefield teammates can beat these games. And like I mentioned earlier, the boss fights just become so stale and boring because even when you are doing the proper shit the defenders tell you to do, like pressing the grab button, which is apparently the only option in the game because that's all they ever say, the pricks just refuse to ever die, and considering the enemies deal piss all damage and you can store a bunch of healing items at all times, there's no real challenge unless you create the challenge yourself, like trying to take no damage or trying to play with your toes or some bullshit. With the early boss fights, in particular Tamashiro, you also have no abilities at that point unless you're doing New Game Plus or you grind for years before you fight him, meaning that when you're fighting him, you pretty much have to put aside the next 10 years of your life so that when you're fighting him, you can get it over and done with. Arrive at Judgment, and I'll be honest, I can make this one very quick too. Crane style. Yep, just the whole thing. It's good on its own, but considering at any point you can swap to Tiger, it is kind of pointless in almost every situation.
However, you gain a leg up by being able to equip and use items, whereas specifically the bosses gain a leg up on you by being able to do these stupid dumb bullshit heat moves. Once a boss gets to a certain amount of health, you get a small cutscene, then they glow with a heat aura and will just spam attacks in your direction and you can't do anything about it but try to run away, and if you don't, you get hit with an extremely strong combo which will finish with a heat action. You can counteract it, but it's kinda bullshit sometimes, like how Tatsuya will just run into a wall because of the slightly awkward controls and then you get murdered. Speaking of enemy bullshit, the enemies will also catch all of your goddamn attacks. It's essentially parrying, but I do believe the game calls it catching. But anyway, the way it works is that you press the guard button and a movement button at the same time and you throw your hands up like this. Within a small window, if an enemy hits you anywhere with anything, you'll grab their attack and do a counter. Also, if an enemy hits you with a weapon, you'll actually take the weapon out of their hands and into yours. But I bring that mechanic up because in this game in particular, so not necessarily the sequel, I swear to Christ, like every enemy catches every attack. There's a boss in particular that intentionally catches all of your attacks because that's his whole gimmick, but you knock an enemy on the ground and they're all, "Oh, I've been defeated," only for them to just stand back up and parry you. Unfortunately, I did kind of find that the best way to fight enemies was just to grab them, throw them to the floor, then punch or kick them while they're down, because there's genuinely nothing they can do about that. If it's a me issue, let me know, because no matter what I tried, nothing proved more effective than just mashing the shit out of circle until you get heat, and then you do a heat action. There's a bunch of people trying to just make like a fun action game where you just chuck bikes at people. Even Lost Judgment is not that complicated. You just do charge finishes at every enemy and then you can still win. Speaking of abilities, considering that the Yakuza games basically always have been RPGs, this game takes it a bit further by making it that you have a traditional level up system, like in actual RPGs, with your stats going up as you gain more levels. In the first two games, you would gain essentially skill points whenever an experience bar would hit the maximum level, but things like your HP and heat gauge would only go up when you spend the skill points to unlock abilities that would then also have the stat buffs tied to them, such as increased health.
Excuse me, miss. Do you have cancer? Wow, mango juice prevents cancer.
Yakuza 3 was the only other game that worked the exact same way as the first two games, but a few of the other games ended up having similar systems to Kenzan, although in Kenzan leveling up wouldn't grant you abilities, and instead you had to learn all of them through various other means. The game was also the first to feature fighting styles, although unlike the future games, it was basically an unarmed style and then 4 variations of the slugger style from Zero. It wasn't as much a fighting style as it was just having 4 different weapon types that you could equip. They each had their own combos and abilities, but considering how earning XP and skills works in Kenzan, you don't invest into any skill trees or anything like that like you do with the later games. And Saitama sucks and people say I'm wrong, then proceed to accidentally explain to me exactly why he's dog shit. Kiwami's balancing between the styles is a lot better than Zero, and unlike Zero, it adds a few extra abilities that allow you to instantly swap fighting styles, such as being able to swap mid-evade without slowing down the game. However, after you do a bunch of Majima Everywhere stuff and gain a bunch of abilities, you may come to realize that the Dragon style is the best one, making the others kinda pointless.
Anti-recency bias, the opposite of recency bias.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, there's a new equals bad meta on the internet.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it's really fucking annoying.